welcome to our next tutorial where we're going to continue to build on our long-ish document. In the last tutorial, if you remember, we added some headings and a table of contents to make our document look easier to read and find our way around it. We've played with the heading options up here. So what we're going to do in this session is move this along a bit further and add in some extra embellishments to our graphics and things like that, and see what else we've got time to put into it. So what I've done in this document offline is I've just removed the extra page I inserted in the last tutorial just to make the document flow better still. And I'm going to scroll down now to our first picture. I'm going to play with pictures first of all. So earlier on in the course we inserted this picture into the document, and further down we inserted this one. And it doesn't matter which one you use, but if you follow along, find one of these pictures and click on it. Now Word doesn't just let you place and position images into your document, it lets you play with a lot of ways that it actually looks and feels. And you can get to that quite simply. When you click on a picture, you'll see the Format tab appears up at the top here. If you click on there, you get a number of options, which we'll leave on the screen for now. The other way of getting there, if you click off that picture, that tab disappears. Just remember that. If I right click the picture, I also get mostly the same options again, and it's a matter of preference about which way you want to access them. Personally, I prefer to right click and get my options here, because I often forget to look up here for the extra tab, but it's up to you. You'll probably find you can get to most things in both areas. So what we'll do first of all is we'll click again on here, single click, and then a right click to get our drop down menu. And what do we have here? We have style. So we can change the way this picture feels with some styles. We can put a frame around it. We can do all these kind of things here. And all you have to do, you get the live preview. Just be aware, as you mouse over these, some of them make the picture big and it pushes everything off the screen. So if I choose that one, for example, and don't forget to scroll down, there's some other ones there. Make it rotate slightly. All these kind of good things. That's quite a cool one there. You can also crop the picture, and by cropping, that means you can make the picture, you can just take a small part of that picture rather than the whole thing. Just by dragging that around, you can choose what you want. So you just move these handles to the bit you want, and you can click and drag your picture behind that hole. What you're doing there is by moving these handles, you're creating a hole on the page, sort of, where you can then drag the bit of the picture you still want to be visible afterwards. And you can just click off that to get what you want. You can see there we've cropped a bit of the picture out. So I'm just going to do a Control Z to come out of there. Out of there again a few times. I don't want those options. Come on. There we go. Back to how I had it. Okay. I'm going to click on it again, right click. So that's the style and the crop options. We can cut the picture, so literally remove it from the document where it is, but keep it in memory to enable us to paste it in somewhere else. So if you're moving it to somewhere in the document, you can do that to move it there, or you could just drag it. But if you've got a long document, that's probably the way. Using a cut is probably the better way to do it. Copy. So if we did cut it out, we use copy to. Sorry, that's incorrect. Copy. So if we want to take a copy of it, but leave this one here, so we can paste it further out somewhere else, or put it in another document. Doesn't have to be a Word document, you can paste it into Excel, WordPad, other documents, you can do that. Save as picture. So in this particular case, we've downloaded this picture from the internet via the online tools within Word. You might want to save that picture out as an actual file, so you can put it somewhere else. So if I click on there, I can now save that as a picture file, JPEG, PNG, whatever my preference is, and I can store for later use. Right click again, change picture. So that pretty much brings up the same interface as when we inserted it. So if I click on that, it brings in the options here. We can do it from a file, from an image search, from my OneDrive, from Facebook, Flickr, I think that is. You've got a few options there. If you just think that's not quite right, I want to change it, but you want the new picture in there, it saves you having to insert another document, another picture, and then remove this one and play around with all that. So that option enables you just to literally change the picture that's already in place. Grouping is not available because we've only got one picture available. That'll be dealt with at another time. Bring to front and bring to back don't really apply in this case. They are for when you have multiple elements on a page that are to an extent overlapping each other, and those elements you can think of sitting on a piece of transparent plastic, for want of a better phrase, and you can, by sending one to the front or brings others to the back, or sending them backwards or bringing them forwards, you can move those pieces of transparent plastic back and forth so one thing can overlay another, that kind of thing. In this case though, we can't do that because we've got nothing overriding. In Word, you'll tend not to do that too often because it's quite rare you get stuff overlapping. It's more something you'd find in something like Publisher, but needless to say, Microsoft have put it into Word for if you're doing quite a complex document or something with multiple graphics elements and some stuff needs to overlay for what you're trying to achieve. We'll probably have another tutorial on that separate to this course. Right click that again. Other options, hyperlink, so we can make this a hot button. So someone clicks on it, you can tell them to go to .com, just like that. Text to display, there isn't one because it's a picture. If I click OK to that, if I mouse over that, you see now it has the web address that it's got a hyperlink to, and it tells me if I press Control click, I can follow that link to that web address. I'm going to hold down Control, click on the picture, and there we see, takes a moment, but it launches the web browser and goes to the page I specified. Just close that down. If you want to change that, if you click on it, right click it, you now have other options. You can remove that hyperlink, you can open it, or you can edit it. So I can actually say that was wrong, take it to somewhere else, or I can say actually I don't need it anymore, just remove it. Okay, so that's hyperlinking, really simple. Generally not something that you'd ever see in a printed document, but for a document you share with someone and you want to send them to somewhere, to a source or something like that, that's quite handy. Right click again, few other options. Insert caption. So we played with trying to do this manually with the table earlier on, and this is a place you can do it for a picture. So I'm going to just click on that now to show you how that works. What this does is basically creates a sub text box where you can have the figure or the caption for that image separate to the rest of your flowing text. So I'm going to type here figure 1 word logo, for example. The label will be figure because it's not an equation and it's not a table. We'll come to table in a minute. All that really happens is it changes the wording at the beginning and whether I want it above or below the selected item, and some other options in there for more advanced users. Come to another time, click OK, and you can see it's now dropped this text box in as a caption for this picture. If I move that picture, the caption doesn't follow, so you need to be careful about that. But it is just a text box. You can click on it and you can edit if you really wanted to. You can make it your own text, and all your text formatting options are still available to it. So I could make that bold, I could make it underlined a bit smaller if I like. Any options I want. And that's captioning. Right click again. Now we looked at the wrap text options when we inserted these. These are how the text flows around the picture. I prefer square, where the text is on a square edge around the side. Tight is quite similar, but you can see what Word does there is it tries to make the text flow to the actual image inside the frame of the picture, where a square literally draws a square from the image file itself, whereas if you have tight, Word tries to interpret what's graphics and what's plain white space and flow the text around it as best it can. Through, not really doing anything in there, but try that again. Through's can't do anything because it doesn't see there's a background in there, I think. Top and bottom literally doesn't give you anything to the side. Text goes behind, that just looks awful. Text in front, sorry, the picture in front, a little bit pointless, but by doing that you could then play with the bring forward and bring behind options. And edit the wrap points. So this is a new feature where you can actually start to, when Word has tried to interpret what is white space, editing the wrap points will enable you to actually play with that setting slightly. But that's for more advanced users, not part of this course. fixed position on the page, so it literally fixes it on that page. Unless you tell it to move, it won't move. And there's some more layout options in there as well, which we won't go into today. Finally, we've got size and position. So this brings up these options here. So these are basically, if I just click cancel for a moment, you can resize and move this by just dragging it around and by playing with these handles on the document, stretching it in different ways. Size and position lets you do that by actually being very specific that you want it, for example, to be 5.5 centimeters, or 6 in this case, can't type, by 5.6 for example. Click OK, it will fix it to that, well not fix it, but it will set it to that size. And if I just scroll down slightly, you see the rule at the top. You can now see that image is now the 5.6 that I've asked for. And the format picture options. So these are much like what you'd get over here in this tab, and there's loads of options in here as well. You've got the fill and line options, which let you do things like a solid fill, makes it look awful, a solid line if you wanted to put a frame around the picture, click on it. One thing to note there is I just noticed, if you're clicking on here and you're playing with these options and you click off to undo what you're going to do, so I want to undo my frame and click in there, this option here is dynamic, so it now sees I'm now selecting text and it's giving me text effects rather than picture effects. So just be aware that these will change depending on what you've got selected. You can get rid of this by just pressing that cross. I'm going to go back to there. Now these are all artistic effects in here, so I'm under now the effects window. So the first one is fill and line, which are fairly obvious. The effects, there's lots of them here. You've got different kinds of shadows you can use. What colour shadow, which way the shadow goes, how far the shadow runs for. Similarly with reflection, or making it glow, or using soft edges. Lots and lots of options in here. Artistic effects, you can get all kinds of weird and wacky effects to apply to your picture. It's not quite using full-blown Photoshop, far from it. But if you're looking to be a bit creative with your picture in your document, there are some options in here for you to do so. 3D format is quite clever. You can do some all kinds of lighting and material kind of options in there. But that is the effects tab. Just close these down here. Next one is size, it's not size, it's layout and properties. So is there a text box to go with it? If it's a text box, what those options are, any alt text you have, so my alternative text. There we go. And then we have picture correction, so we can play with the sharpness, the softness, the brightness of it, so we can make it really bright or not bright at all. Play with the contrast, make it look quite pale or quite stark. How saturated it is, so we can put some colour in, take some colour out to make it black and white. You can play with those options. Play with the colour temperature, so 6500 is, I think 6500 is standard daylight, if I remember rightly. Do write in if I've got that wrong. But you can play with these options as well. You can make it look quite different, and you can recolor it to a different colour. You're not always able to do that with every picture. It'll do that if it's a kind of a graphics image like this. If it was a full photograph, you may find that some of these options aren't available to you. And cropping, a bit like we had before, using the tools up here. But that's formatting pictures. Those are the options available to you when you're editing pictures and graphics inside your document, and I hope you find those really useful. And we're going to move on to the next video.